everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. It is time for my monthly makes video. As part of the design team over at the Counterfeit Kit Challenge, once a month we make our own scrapbook kits, and then we set about using the inspiration from real world products to create our own supplies to go with those kits. I have a couple of fun ideas for you. Let's start off with my favorite, which is that paintbrush paper. Here's a look at the Vicki Boutin paper that inspired this project. I built my kit based on some of that inspiration, but my kit has slightly different color tones to it. So the first thing I need to do is choose the papers that I'm going to use to build my paintbrushes. We're going to paper piece these paintbrushes together, and I will walk you step by step through my process, so this should be very doable if you want to give it a try as well. Got my colors selected and set off to the side. I have a solid piece of white cardstock that we're going to build everything on. Now let's take a step back and talk about what building these pieces means. So I'm looking at those paintbrush and I'm seeing shapes. The handle is a long rectangle. The actual brush is a square or a rectangle with rounded curves leading into that handle. And then the bristles of the brush are a rectangle that are fringed. So those are the ideas I'm going to use as we work on paper piecing. And in order to get to the paper piecing, we have to figure out sizing. Now I know my paper is 12 inches wide. You could do this on any size of paper, especially if you're a card maker. But for me, 12 inches, the easy math is I want to have 5 brushes, and if I make them 2 inches wide, that equals 10 inches, and that'll give me a little bit of room to leave gaps in between each paintbrush. So I'm going to start off by cutting a rectangle that is 2 inches wide, and now I have to figure out how tall I want it to be. The main shape of the brush is either a square or a rectangle, so I'm going to go ahead and start off with a square. I'm thinking square isn't quite right, but I can always cut it down, and it's a little bit harder to add onto it, although glue and tape do help you do that. So I'm looking at the square and I'm thinking, no, that's not quite right. I really do think it needs to be more of a rectangle. So I'm just guessing at this point and trimming off some excess to see how I'm feeling about it. Don't worry, I will give you exact measurements if you don't want to go through all of this, but I think there is a lot of benefit into watching me trial and error as I put things together, because this doesn't just magically happen. My brain doesn't just pop up with these finished ideas. It's a process. It's a creative process. And I want to encourage you to just start trying things. Just get out some paper and start doing. So I feel like I need to do a little bit of fine tuning, and I come to a point where I think it's pretty good. And if we take a look at that paintbrush again, there's a bit of a layer to it. So I'm going to make a physical layer. We could do that with ink or drawing or whatever, but for me, cutting out the paper seems like the easiest tactic. Now I'm turning to the handle, and I'm thinking maybe half the width of the brush should be handle. So I start with cutting off something that's a little bigger than what I think I need, and then I will go ahead and trim it down to 1 inch. Try it out, look how everything looks together, and then decide that that's all good. And then we can take a look at the final measurements of everything before we just turn this into a template to cut out all the paintbrushes. So I've got 2 inches wide by about 1 1/4, just over 1 1/4 inches tall. And then my layering piece, as soon as I get it lined up in a good spot, is the 2 inches wide by 3/4 inches tall. So there you go. If you don't want to do any experimenting or math, those are the dimensions. And then the handle is 1 inch wide, and we'll decide on the height later after we get everything together. So I'm going to put the handle onto the brush, and we still need to create that curved shape. This is trial and error as well. I'm going to use a pencil so that I can erase any errors as I go, and I'm going to draw that curved shape. And I learned a while ago some drawing tips that if you trace over that same shape more than once, your line starts becoming an average of the shape. And if you cut along the middle of that line, you'll get a much smoother shape. Once my curve is just right, then I can trim it out and continue to refine. Like here, I'm rounding off the corner edges just a little bit more so they're not as sharp. Notice I did make my handle just a little bit narrower as I was cutting along, and I'm going to clean that up a little bit with the trimmer. And while I'm cleaning that up, I also trimmed that handle shorter because I know these are going to bleed off the edge of my paper. Now I just need to trace this template onto the different colors I'm going to use, as well as that layering piece. I don't need to trace and hand cut that one because it's just a simple rectangle that I can cut on the trimmer, and I will use the leftover scraps for that. So yes, this is a little bit of a process of tracing and then a bit of fussy cutting, although this fussy cutting isn't too hard, and I find it goes easier if you kind of rough cut around everything, and then you have a smaller piece to work with as you cut along those curves. I've got all my paintbrush handles and layer pieces cut out. I've chosen the inks that match the papers that I chose, and I've cut white pieces at 2 inches by, I think that was 1 3/4 inches. Those pieces will become my bristles, and then to make the fringe, I'm going to use fringe scissors. You can use just regular scissors and do multiple cuts, but I have these scissors and I like them, so that is what I'm going to use. Before I fringe them, I do want to ink them to make them look like a paintbrush, and I'm going to do that by tipping my ink pad up a little bit so I don't get too much ink all at once, and then sliding it across the paper. I use Concord and 9th inks, which have a foam pad. You do have to be extra gentle with foam pads as you do this direct to paper dragging technique because the foam is delicate and it can tear up the paper. So just go slowly and gently if that's the kind of ink pad that you have. If you have a felt pad, you can kind of get in there and scrub it around and it won't hurt the ink pad. Because foam pads can be super juicy and let out more ink, I do start off slowly, and if your pad is more inky, you can kind of tip it into the corner and drag lines. And don't worry about it being uneven or anything because this is paint. It's going to be splotchy looking, and that's the look we're going for. Now, ideally, I would let that ink dry longer before cutting it because paper tears more than cuts when it's wet, so you want to make sure that that ink is dry. But I was ready to move on for video's sake, so there you go. This is what this is going to look like when it's layered up. I am going to do one more bit of detailed inking on that layering piece. I did think I was going to pop that layering piece up with some foam also, but I decided to go ahead and just glue it down flat. But you can see that the inking makes enough of a difference to the look that it will give it depth and dimension, and then I don't think I need to use that foam. So inking the edges and then doing a little bit of that same ink dragging along that piece, and that's going to add more detail. There we go. That is what the paintbrush will look like when it is done. Next step is to align our paintbrushes on our background paper. I did kind of shift it over a little bit too far, so I'm going to have to squeeze in the rest of these as I go. But for inking the background paper itself, I am starting off on an edge of the paintbrush and creating a line that will be the edge of the paint, tipping it the other way, creating another line, and then kind of filling in the middle. Again, not worrying if it's streaky or blobby because that is the painterly look that we are going for. And then I will go ahead and glue my paintbrush down. And like I said, I should have shifted the paintbrushes over to the left a little bit more, but it is what it is, and you keep moving forward. And in the end, I'm really happy with how this paper turned out anyway. It really mimics the original quite nicely, and you could add even more detail to this if you wanted more splatters like are on the original, but I'm very happy with it. I hope you try this one. Let's move on to an easier one using lots of washi tape. So I really liked this piece of pattern paper in the inspiration kit that was black with colorful stripes on it, and I don't have anything like that in my stash. So I'm going to recreate this with washi tape. I do have skinny washi tape in my stash, and what I'm going to do is pick colors based on my kit because the inspiration is slightly different than what I came up with, and so these are the colors I chose. I also chose some washi that has some gold accents to it because some of my pieces in my overall kit have some gold on there, so that will all blend together. I also did choose red as a pop of color to this kit, so I want to make sure that I have some red in here. So this particular skinny washi tape I bought off of Amazon, and I will leave you a link down below if you want to check that out. But I really want to encourage you to shop your favorite crafty store first because I want to support our crafty businesses so that they stick around for the future, because I know they're kind of struggling right now with some of stuff that's going on in the economy. Okay, with my colors picked out, and I put them in an order that I think will work, making sure that I have enough distance between different colors or similar colors separated out by different colors. And I am going to start with the white one in the middle, and The key to this project is to use a grid. So I've got my piece taped down to my glass grid mat. If you've got paper grids, whatever you've got that you can use will help you line up the tape so that you'll get even stripes. All right, as I start in the middle, I am stretching my tape from corner to corner, and that will help start the structure of the stripes. I'm also kind of putting some pressure on the tape to tug it so that when I press it down onto the paper, there won't be any wrinkles or bubbles in it, and that will help it stick completely. After all is said and done, I will make sure each piece is tacked down well enough and add glue if I need to. You saw me do it now, but I will tend to do that all at the end. This tape has been sticky enough for most of the tapes. They're not all exactly the same, that I didn't have to really do a lot of that. So just know that washi tape doesn't always stick and you may need glue. Okay, to do my next stripe, I am measuring down a ½ inch on that grid. So I'm lining up the edge of my tape with the next ½ inch tick mark on the grid. And I'm just gonna keep doing that. As I use each tape, I'm going to set them off to the side in the order that I've used them so that when it's time to start the next sequence, I will already have the tapes in order and I can just pick up the next one and keep going. So I think that completed one series of the tapes, and I've started again with the next one in the series, and I will keep going. All right, I did run out of one of the tapes partway through this, and I was concerned that that might happen, so I had a backup plan in mind. I pulled out another tape that is kind of similar in color and vibe, and I'm going to replace that tape with some of this other tape. Now I'm going to keep this piece and kind of alternate the one tape with the other tape so it can fill in all of the gaps and be similar along the way and still be a little bit different if people are paying that much close attention. So one on the top, one on the bottom, and then I will continue my patterns and I will pick up that tape that I set aside to fill in the next place where that would come in the sequence. And here I am finishing up the last bit of this one corner, and it is looking good. The very last bit in the corner can be a little bit tricky, so I make sure I add glue to that because it is just a teeny tiny little wedge of tape. Once all the tape is in place, I do like to burnish it down. You can use a credit card, you can use a bone folder. I prefer a brayer that I can just roll across everything and make sure it's nice and tacked down, and also use glue if you need to. You can peel it up off the mat and then trim off all the edges. I really love my Spellbinders 9-inch shears. They're non-stick, so it's great for trimming tape. They're nice and long so that they will glide along the edge of the paper without cutting into the paper. And as you'll see, as soon as I get all of this tape snipped off, the tape just kind of peels off my scissors and I don't have to worry about sticky residue. I've got everything trimmed up, and here is a look between the original and my interpretation. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. All right, that is it for this time around. I hope you got some good ideas to use in your own crafting life. I will be back with more projects for you very soon, and until then, I hope you have an artful day.